History isn't just a collection of dates and names. It's a puzzle with missing pieces, a story with chapters ripped out, a canvas where the truth has been painted over again and again. Think about that for a moment. Everything we've been taught, everything we assume about the past, might be just the surface, a carefully crafted version of events, hiding secrets so shocking they could rewrite what we thought we knew. And today, we're pulling back the curtain. Some of these secrets were buried by those in power, others vanished into the shadows of time, and a few were right in front of us, hidden in plain sight all along. Imagine walking through a museum, gazing at artifacts and portraits, believing you understand the stories they tell. But what if those objects could whisper? What if they revealed that the history we've been handed is incomplete, or worse, deliberately distorted? From ancient civilizations to modern empires, the truth has often been the first casualty of power. Kings burned records, conquerors rewrote narratives, and entire cultures were erased, all to shape the world in someone's image. And yet, fragments of the real story survive, clues tucked away in forgotten letters, buried beneath ruins, or encoded in art and legend, waiting for someone to piece them together. That's exactly what we're doing today. We're uncovering 30 of history's most astonishing secrets, revelations that defy textbooks, challenge myths, and force us to question everything. Some are chilling, others border on the unbelievable, and a few will make you wonder, how could this have stayed hidden for so long? This isn't just about uncovering the past, it's about understanding how easily truth can be manipulated, and why these secrets matter now more than ever. So buckle up, because by the time we're done, you'll never look at history the same way again. The greatest tragedy in the history of knowledge wasn't a battle or a natural disaster. It was the day flames consumed the Library of Alexandria. Picture a place so vast it held nearly 500,000 scrolls, where the works of Aristotle, original manuscripts of Greek playwrights, and groundbreaking scientific treatises sat side by side. This wasn't just a library, it was the beating heart of the ancient world's intellect, a lighthouse of human understanding. And then it was gone. The most common story pins the blame on Julius Caesar, whose troops allegedly set ships ablaze during a siege in 48 BCE, the fire spreading to the docks and eventually the library itself. But here's the twist: historians now suspect the truth is far messier. The library likely suffered multiple attacks over centuries, from Caesar's fire to religious purges and political vandalism, each chipping away at humanity's collective memory. What makes this loss so devastating isn't just the sheer volume of knowledge, it's the irreplaceable insights we'll never recover. Imagine if we'd preserved the works of Democritus, who theorized the existence of atoms centuries before modern science confirmed it. Or the complete histories of civilizations like Carthage, whose records were systematically erased by rivals. Some scholars believe the library even housed early mechanical blueprints, including prototypes for steam engines and celestial calculators, technologies that could have reshaped the ancient world. But perhaps the most haunting question is this: did any of it survive? Recent excavations beneath modern Alexandria have uncovered secret tunnels and storage rooms, some containing charred papyrus fragments. While most are too damaged to read, a few show legible text, fueling hope that more caches might still lie hidden. Even today, archaeologists sift through the ruins, chasing whispers of scrolls smuggled to safety before the flames took hold. Because if even a fraction of that knowledge endured, it could rewrite our understanding of history itself. If the Library of Alexandria represents history's most heartbreaking loss, the Voynich Manuscript might be its most frustrating mystery. Discovered in 1912 by a Polish book dealer named Wilfred Voynich, this bizarre 240-page book looks like something ripped from a medieval alchemist's dreams, filled with strange botanical illustrations, astrological charts, and naked women bathing in what appears to be emerald green water. But here's what makes it truly maddening. Every single word is written in an unknown script, a language that has defied decipherment for over 6 centuries. Cryptographers, linguists, even wartime codebreakers armed with supercomputers have tried and failed to crack it. The text follows patterns that suggest it's not just gibberish, yet no one can agree on whether it's an elaborate hoax, a lost language, or something far stranger. Take the plants drawn in its pages, for example. Some resemble real herbs, but others seem to sprout from pure imagination, roots like twisted serpents, leaves dotted with eyes, flowers blooming in impossible geometries. Then there's the biological section, where those nude figures float through interconnected tubes and chambers, as if mapping a human body designed by someone who'd never seen one. And the writing itself, it flows left to right with looping letters that look almost familiar, like Latin script melted and reshaped by an alien hand. The most tantalizing clue, carbon dating, places the vellum between 1404 and 1438, and the ink matches recipes from that era. So if it's a forgery, it's an impossibly old one. Recent theories range from plausible to downright wild. One camp argues it's a coded medical text, perhaps a herbal remedy book encrypted to protect trade secrets. Others believe it's a constructed language, like an early attempt at philosophical Esperanto. Then there's the fringe idea that it's a relic from a lost civilization, or even extraterrestrial in origin. But the most compelling breakthrough came in 2019, when a researcher claimed to identify snippets of old Turkish hiding in its symbols. Yet even this lead fizzled. The translation produced fractured, dreamlike phrases like "she is the sky's milk" and "be wary of the moon's tears." Hardly the recipe book or star map scholars hoped for. What keeps the Voynich Manuscript haunting researchers isn't just the puzzle. It's the possibility that somewhere in those cryptic pages lies a revelation about medieval science, lost knowledge, or even a world view entirely foreign to ours. Because if we ever do crack its code, we might uncover more than just words. We might find a window into a forgotten way of thinking, sealed away in plain sight. Beneath the crystal-clear waters off the coast of a tiny Greek island called Antikythera, a shipwreck from the 1st century BC yielded an artifact so baffling, it shattered our assumptions about ancient technology. When sponge divers first hauled up the corroded bronze lump in 1901, archaeologists initially dismissed it as just another Roman statue. But decades later, when X-rays peeled back the layers of time, the truth emerged. This was no ordinary relic. It was an intricate clockwork device, a labyrinth of interlocking gears more complex than anything else from its era. Today, we call it the Antikythera Mechanism, and it remains the most sophisticated piece of engineering from the ancient world. Picture a shoebox-sized machine with over 30 precisely cut bronze gears, arranged in a system so advanced it could predict lunar eclipses, track the cycles of the Olympic Games, and even model the irregular orbit of the moon, all with accuracy rivaling modern instruments. The most staggering part, devices of similar complexity wouldn't reappear in Europe until the 1400s, over 1,400 years later. How did the Greeks achieve this? The mechanism's gears form a miniature cosmos, mirroring the motions of celestial bodies with mathematical precision. One dial alone calculated the Saros cycle, a period of 18 years and 11 days used to predict eclipses, while another recreated the erratic wobble of the moon's path, a phenomenon so subtle it shouldn't have been detectable without telescopes. But here's the mystery that keeps historians awake. Who built it? The ship carrying the mechanism likely sank while en route from Rhodes to Rome, and clues point to the workshop of Hipparchus, a genius astronomer who mapped the stars with eerie accuracy. Yet even he shouldn't have possessed the metallurgical knowledge to craft gears with teeth fine enough to mesh flawlessly. Some researchers whisper of a lost lineage of inventors, their names erased by time, while others speculate the device was a one-of-a-kind prototype, a glimpse of what ancient science could have become if not for the collapse of classical civilizations. Modern attempts to reconstruct the mechanism have only deepened the awe. Using 3D imaging, scientists discovered hidden inscriptions, a user manual etched into the bronze, explaining how to read planetary positions and adjust for leap years. One phrase, barely legible, reads "golden little sphere," possibly referring to a now-lost display of the sun's movement. But the most haunting question remains unanswered. Was this device unique, or were there others like it? If so, their loss might represent a scientific dark age, a 1,000-year gap where humanity forgot, then reinvented, the very concept of precision machinery. The Antikythera Mechanism isn't just an artifact. It's a ghost from a parallel future, a reminder that history's greatest surprises often lie not in what survived, but in what almost did. Deep in the basement of the National Museum of Iraq sits a cluster of unassuming clay jars, each no taller than a coffee mug, sealed with asphalt and cradling a copper cylinder and iron rod. To the untrained eye, they look like ancient storage containers, the kind used for scrolls or spices. But when German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig unearthed them near Baghdad in 1938, he noticed something strange. These weren't just pots, they were devices, and if his theory was correct, they were proof that someone, 2,000 years ago, might have harnessed electricity centuries before Galvani and Volta discovered it in Europe. The so-called Baghdad Battery doesn't just defy timelines, it rewrites them. Replica experiments show that when filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or wine, the jar acts as a primitive voltaic cell, generating around 1 volt of electricity. Not enough to power a light bulb, but enough to produce a tingling shock or, crucially, to electroplate objects with gold or silver, and that's where things get eerie. Artifacts from the same region, intricate gilded figurines with microscopically thin metal coatings, suggest the Parthians or Sasanians might have used these jars for exactly that purpose. Imagine craftsmen dunking jewelry into a solution, these batteries humming silently as they transferred shimmering layers of precious metals onto bronze or copper. Yet most textbooks dismiss the idea outright. Skeptics argue the jars could have held sacred scrolls, their metal components merely decorative. Others point out that no wires or conductors have ever been found nearby. But here's the counterpoint. Organic materials like cloth or reed could have served as wires, long since rotted away, and the asphalt seals, perfect insulators to prevent short circuits, a detail too precise to be accidental. Even more telling, similar devices appear in Egyptian murals and Celtic artifacts, hinting at a scattered, lost understanding of electrochemistry. So why the resistance? Part of it is chronology. The idea of batteries in antiquity clashes with the tidy narrative of scientific progress. But there's another layer. These jars were found in 1938, on the brink of World War II, when the world had little appetite for rethinking ancient technology. By the time scholars revisited them, the originals had vanished during the Iraq War, leaving only replicas and X-rays as clues. Today, the debate rages on. Because if these really were batteries, they're not just curiosities, they're evidence that humanity's relationship with electricity might be far older and far more mysterious than we ever imagined. Scattered across the arid plains of southern Peru, the Nazca lines stretch for miles, enormous drawings etched into the earth so vast they can only be fully appreciated from the sky. These aren't just simple markings. We're talking about intricate designs of spiders, hummingbirds, monkeys, and geometric shapes so precise they defy logic for a culture that supposedly lacked flight. The scale is staggering. Some figures stretch longer than 3 football fields, their lines carved a foot deep into the rust-colored soil, untouched by wind or rain for over 2,000 years. But here's what's truly mind-bending. No one knows for certain why they were made. For decades, the leading theory painted them as an astronomical calendar, their alignments matching solstices or constellations. Yet recent research suggests something even more fascinating. archaeologists studying the surrounding hills found platforms and pottery shards littered with remnants of ritual offerings, hallucinogenic plants, smashed vessels, even traces of blood. This hints at a darker, more visceral purpose. The lines might have been sacred pathways walked by priests during ceremonies to commune with gods or ancestors. Imagine chanting processions moving single file along these giant grooves, the desert itself transformed into a temple under the blistering sun. Then there's the alien hypothesis. The sheer precision of the lines, some running arrows straight for miles despite uneven terrain, fueled wild speculation that ancient astronauts directed their construction. But here's what skeptics often overlook. The Nazca people had simple tools and ingenious methods. Rope and stake systems could have plotted the designs, while careful removal of dark surface pebbles exposed lighter soil beneath, creating stark contrasts visible from above. And that from above detail, it's key. Recent drone surveys revealed previously hidden formations, a massive orca, a sprawling serpent, suggesting the Nazca might have built makeshift observation towers or even hot air balloons to oversee their work. The most compelling twist, though, lies beneath the surface. Ground-penetrating radar uncovered a network of hidden aqueducts called puquios, spiraling tunnels that channeled water from underground sources. This connects the lines to survival, not just symbolism. In a land where water meant life, the geoglyphs could have been part of a grand ritual to ensure rainfall, their shapes mirroring the flow of rivers or the creatures dependent on them. Some researchers even propose the lines acted as a giant prayer board, their creation a desperate negotiation with the heavens in the face of drought. What makes the Nazca lines so chilling isn't just their mystery, it's the realization that we might never fully grasp their intent. They're a message in a language we've half forgotten, a testament to how much of history's truth fades into the desert wind. And perhaps that's the point. These weren't meant for us. They were whispers to the gods, written in lines too vast for mortals to read. Among the Dead Sea Scrolls, those ancient Hebrew texts hidden in desert caves for 2,000 years, one stands apart not for its religious wisdom, but for what it promises: unimaginable wealth. The Copper Scroll, discovered in 1952 near the ruins of Qumran, isn't made of fragile parchment like the others. Its words are stamped into thin sheets of copper, as if the creators wanted this message to endure. And what a message it is, a detailed inventory of 64 hiding places, each supposedly containing treasures of gold, silver, precious oils, and even priestly robes. The tally is staggering: over 4,600 talents of silver, nearly 1,300 talents of gold, and 650 bars of an unidentified precious metal. Converted today, we're talking about billions of dollars worth of riches buried somewhere in the Judean wilderness. But here's where the mystery deepens. Unlike the other Dead Sea Scrolls, which shed light on spiritual traditions, the Copper Scroll reads like a cryptic treasure map, yet no one's ever found a single item on its list. The directions are maddeningly vague, referencing landmarks like the ruin in the Valley of Achor or the Solomonic Pool's eastern wall, places that might have been obvious 2 millennia ago but are now lost to time. Some entries defy logic entirely, like a hoard supposedly hidden beneath the stairs of the refuge tunnel, a structure scholars can't identify. Even the language is odd, mixing Hebrew with Greek measurements, suggesting the scroll wasn't written by the same scribes as the rest of the Qumran text. So who hid this treasure, and why? Theories range from the plausible to the sensational. Mainstream archaeologists argue it documents the wealth of the Second Temple in Jerusalem, smuggled out before the Romans sacked the city in 70 CE. Others believe it belonged to the Essenes, the ascetic community linked to the Dead Sea Scrolls, who may have buried their communal assets during revolts. Then there's the wild card that the treasure never existed at all. Skeptics point out that copper was cheaper than parchment in antiquity, raising the possibility that the scroll was a symbolic record or even an ancient prank. Yet the hunt persists. Modern expeditions armed with ground-penetrating radar and drones have scoured the caves around Qumran, uncovering empty chambers that match the scroll's descriptions, proof that someone at some point dug precisely where the text indicates. In 2006, a team even found a 2,000-year-old shovel near one alleged hiding spot, its wooden handle long rotted away but its iron blade still intact. The most tantalizing clue, a handful of the scroll's locations point to areas now buried beneath modern neighborhoods or military zones, places too politically sensitive to excavate. What keeps the legend alive isn't just greed, it's the realization that if even one of these caches were found, it could rewrite history. Imagine unearthing the missing vestments of the Jewish high priests or the original temple's menorah, looted by Rome and lost for centuries. The Copper Scroll isn't just a list, it's a ghost of a vanished world, a whisper that the desert still holds secrets worth more than gold. And until someone cracks its code, the earth keeps its silence. One of Rome's most elite military units, the legendary 9th Legion, marched into the misty highlands of Britain in the 2nd century and vanished without a trace. 5,000 heavily armed soldiers, an unstoppable force of imperial might, disappeared so completely that even their eagle standard, the sacred symbol of Roman honor, was never recovered. Historians have puzzled over their fate for centuries, debating whether they fell in battle, dissolved into rebellion, or met something even more sinister. But the deeper you dig, the stranger the story becomes, because their disappearance might not have been an accident, but a deliberate act of historical erasure. The last confirmed record of the 9th Legion comes from a stone inscription in York, England, dated to around 108 AD. After that, silence. Roman military logs, usually meticulous about troop movements, suddenly stop mentioning them. Later historians like Cassius Dio vaguely reference heavy losses in Britain around 117 AD, but never name the 9th directly. This has led to decades of speculation. Was the Legion ambushed by Caledonian tribes in the Scottish Highlands, overwhelmed in a repeat of the devastating Battle of Teutoburg Forest? Or did something more calculated happen? Archaeology offers tantalizing clues. In 1959, excavations near the Roman fort of Trimontium uncovered a grisly scene, hundreds of skeletal remains bearing brutal combat injuries, alongside shattered fragments of Roman armor and weapons. The bones date to roughly the right period, and the location matches where the 9th was last stationed. But here's the twist: forensic analysis revealed some of the dead were killed execution style, their hands bound behind their backs before the fatal blow. This suggests surrender, then slaughter. Yet the mystery doesn't end there. In 2015, metal detectorists in Norfolk stumbled upon a cache of Roman coins minted after the 9th disappearance, several stamped with the Legion's insignia. If they were destroyed, why were their symbols still in circulation? Some scholars argue the Legion wasn't wiped out at all, but quietly disbanded after a mutiny or political disgrace. Rome had a habit of erasing disgraced units from records, like the damned memoria practice of chiseling names from monuments, the most chilling theory. The 9th may have deserted en masse. A handful of Roman-era graves in Germany contain artifacts matching the Legion's gear, yet the remains show signs of local burial customs, raising the possibility that some soldiers fled Britain altogether. Imagine the scandal: Rome's finest abandoning their posts to vanish into the wilderness. No wonder imperial scribes would have buried the truth. Whatever happened, their ghost lingers. From Scottish folklore about an army swallowed by the earth to modern novels spinning tales of supernatural doom, the 9th Legion's disappearance became a cautionary myth. But the real lesson might be simpler. History isn't just written by the victors. Sometimes it's rewritten by those desperate to hide their failures. In the shadowy world of archaeological hoaxes, few artifacts have captured the public imagination like the crystal skulls, those hauntingly beautiful carvings said to hold ancient mystical powers. Museums once displayed them as relics of lost Mesoamerican civilizations, attributing them to the Aztecs or Maya. Hollywood spun tales of supernatural curses, and New Age believers swore they emitted healing energy. But the truth, these glittering enigmas are some of the most elaborate fakes in history, their real origins far less glamorous than the myth surrounding them. Take the most famous example, the Mitchell-Hedges skull, named after adventurer Frederick Mitchell Hedges, who claimed his daughter discovered it beneath a Mayan pyramid in Belize in 1924. With its detachable jawbone and uncanny lifelike detail, it was hailed as a masterpiece of pre-Columbian craftsmanship until science caught up. Modern electron microscopy revealed tool marks consistent with 19th-century jewelers' wheels, not hand-carving methods used by ancient artisans. Even more damning, the quartz crystal used wasn't locally sourced but matched material from German and Brazilian mines active long after the Maya collapsed. Yet the deception runs deeper. In the late 1800s, a cottage industry flourished in Mexico City, where artisans mass-produced crystal skulls for European collectors hungry for exotic curios. Many were crafted using carborundum, an abrasive invented in 1893, leaving telltale scratches invisible to the naked eye. The British Museum's skull, once a crown jewel of their collection, was exposed as a fake in 2005 when scans showed it had been polished with modern lapidary tools. Even the Smithsonian's hefty 15-pound skull, donated anonymously in 1992, turned out to be a late 19th century fabrication. What's fascinating isn't just the forgery, it's how these objects hijacked history. The myth of their antiquity took root during a perfect storm: Western obsession with lost civilizations, a lack of scientific dating methods, and showmen like Mitchell Hedges spinning irresistible yarns about sacrificial rituals and psychic visions. Indigenous groups, ironically, had no tradition linking crystal skulls to their cultures. The connection was invented entirely by outsiders. By the time Indiana Jones cemented their legend in 2008's Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, the hoax had outgrown the truth. But here's the twist. Some researchers argue these fakes still have value not as ancient artifacts, but as artifacts of the 19th century. They reveal more about colonial greed, the birth of archaeology as a science, and our endless hunger for mystery than any genuine relic could. The skulls remind us that sometimes the most compelling secrets aren't buried in the past. They're hiding in plain sight, masquerading as truth. Genghis Khan's burial site isn't just a historical curiosity, it's the ultimate vanishing act. The man who forged the largest contiguous empire in history, whose armies redrew the map from the Pacific to the Mediterranean, ordered his final resting place to disappear so thoroughly that 8 centuries later we're still hunting in vain. According to legend, his funeral procession slaughtered every witness they encountered: soldiers, servants, even birds nesting in nearby trees to erase all traces of the rout. The earth itself was said to have been trampled by 10,000 horses until the grave blended seamlessly into the steppe. But the real secret isn't just the location's physical concealment. It's the cultural firewall that's kept it hidden long after the Mongols abandoned their empire. For Mongolians, disturbing Khan's tomb isn't just taboo, it's unthinkable. Many believe his spirit still guards the land, and tampering with his grave would unleash catastrophic curses. Even modern scientists tread carefully. In 2016, a documentary crew claimed to have found the tomb in the Kentiai Mountains using satellite imagery, only for Mongolian officials to swiftly ban excavations, citing national reverence. Local herders speak of eerie phenomena near suspected sites: compasses spinning wildly, sudden storms rising from clear skies, as if the land itself rejects intruders. This isn't superstition, it's a living tradition. Khan's descendants, who still dominate Mongolia's population, view the search as sacrilege, a Western obsession that disrespects their ancestors' final wishes. Yet the technological arms race to find the tomb rages on. Teams have deployed everything from drones to ground-penetrating radar, scanning an area roughly the size of Delaware. One promising lead points to a zone called the Forbidden Taboo, a region so sacred that even in Khan's era, no one could enter without royal permission. Satellite sweeps there revealed unnatural subterranean structures, but expeditions keep mysteriously stalling. Another theory suggests the grave lies beneath the Onon River, diverted temporarily during burial, a hydrological feat the Mongols were known to execute. What makes this search so tantalizing isn't just the potential treasure, though historians speculate the tomb could hold loot from half of Eurasia, but the lost knowledge it might contain. Khan's burial likely included artifacts detailing the Mongol Empire's inner workings, maps, treaties, perhaps even his own writings. Some scholars whisper of the possibility of a death mask casting, which could reveal the true face of a man whose appearance remains hotly debated. But here's the brutal truth: we may never find it. Between the cultural protections, the sheer scale of the search area, and the Mongols' unparalleled skill at concealment, Khan's tomb is the ultimate historical blind spot. And maybe that's how it should be. In a world where nothing stays hidden, his grave stands as a rare defiance, a last victory for history's greatest conqueror who chose to vanish on his own terms. In the scorching summer of 1518, the streets of Strasbourg became the stage for one of history's most chilling spectacles, a plague not of boils or fever but of dance. It began with a single woman, Frau Trophia, who stepped into the square one July afternoon and began twisting her body in erratic, jerking movements. Within days, dozens joined her, their limbs thrashing uncontrollably as if pulled by invisible strings. By month's end, nearly 400 people were caught in the frenzy, dancing until their feet bled, some collapsing from exhaustion or even heart attacks. Authorities, desperate to stop the madness, did the unthinkable. They hired musicians and built wooden stages, believing the dancers needed to wear themselves out. Instead, the music only fueled the hysteria. This wasn't performance, it was possession. What could drive an entire community to dance themselves to death? For centuries, scholars dismissed it as mass hysteria, a psychological wildfire sparked by stress. The years leading up to 1518 had been brutal. Crop failures, famine, and diseases like smallpox had left Strasbourg teetering on the edge. Some historians argue the dancing was a collective breakdown, a desperate release from suffering, but newer research suggests something more sinister might have been at play. Ergot, a toxic fungus that grows on damp rye bread, produces chemicals startlingly similar to LSD. Ingest enough, and hallucinations, convulsions, and burning sensations follow, symptoms eerily matching contemporary accounts of the dancers feeling fire in their limbs. Could a batch of poisoned bread have set off this nightmare? Yet the ergot theory has holes. Most victims didn't exhibit classic poisoning signs like vomiting, and the outbreak lasted too long for a single contaminated meal. Others point to a forgotten medieval phenomenon called choreomania, where communities would spontaneously dance to appease vengeful saints. Pilgrimage records show similar outbreaks across Europe, often near churches dedicated to St. Vitus, the patron saint of dancers. Some sufferers even traveled to his shrines, claiming only holy intervention stopped their convulsions. Modern neuroscience offers another angle: the power of suggestion. Under extreme stress, the brain's motor cortex can misfire, triggering involuntary movements. Combine that with religious fervor and a few isolated cases, and you have a recipe for mass psychogenic illness, a physical manifestation of shared trauma. The musicians and stages might have acted like gasoline, validating the delusion and trapping sufferers in a feedback loop. The true horror lies in the aftermath. When the dancing finally ceased in September, survivors were left with broken bodies and shattered reputations, many branded as sinners or lunatics. Strasbourg's leaders, eager to erase the embarrassment, purged records of the event. Today, the dancing plague stands as a dark reminder of how fear and superstition can twist reality, and how easily the human mind can become its own worst enemy. In the stark, wind-scoured deserts of China's Xinjiang region, archaeologists made a discovery that sent shockwaves through our understanding of ancient history: perfectly preserved mummies with striking European features. These weren't just any remains. The so-called Tarim mummies, some dating back nearly 4,000 years, wore brightly colored woolen garments, their faces framed by long noses, light-colored hair, and even red or blonde beards. At first glance, you'd assume they belonged in the Caucasus or the steppes of Ukraine. But here they were, buried in the heart of Asia, thousands of miles from where their genetics suggested they belonged. When DNA analysis was finally conducted in the 21st century, the results upended decades of assumptions. These individuals weren't travelers or traders passing through. They were a settled population with deep roots in the region, yet their genetic profile linked them to ancient groups from the Black Sea area. How did they get there? The prevailing theory suggests an epic migration during the Bronze Age, when nomadic herders moved eastward along the vast Eurasian steppe, carrying with them not just their genes but groundbreaking technologies like wheeled carts and metallurgy. But here's the twist: despite their Western ancestry, the Tarim people showed no signs of mixing with neighboring East Asian populations for centuries. Their isolation was so complete that they became a genetic time capsule, frozen in the very place history least expected. The artifacts buried with them only deepen the mystery. One mummy, the famous Churchen Man, was found in a tomb filled with remnants of cheese, the oldest ever discovered, suggesting dairy farming practices imported from the West. Another, the Beauty of Lulan, wore a finely woven cloak and leather boots, her burial goods including a comb and basket woven with a skill that matched contemporary European craftsmanship. Even their language leaves clues. Some scholars argue that the mysterious Tocharian texts found later in the region, an Indo-European language once spoken there, might have been their linguistic legacy. What makes the Tarim mummies truly revolutionary isn't just their existence, it's what they force us to confront about ancient connectivity. This wasn't a world of isolated cultures developing in bubbles, but a dynamic network of movement and exchange far earlier than we imagined. The Silk Road, it seems, had prehistoric predecessors, and yet the mummies also present a haunting question: why did this vibrant, genetically distinct group vanish without a trace? By the time the Han Dynasty rose centuries later, their European features had melted into the region's diversity, their story nearly erased. Today, the mummies sit at the center of political tensions, with Chinese authorities downplaying their Western origins to fit nationalist narratives. But science doesn't lie. These silent figures, preserved by the desert's dry air, whisper a truth that textbooks rarely admit. History's map was always more fluid, more surprising than we dared to believe. And somewhere in their DNA lies a forgotten chapter of human migration, one that stretches across continents and challenges everything we thought we knew about the ancient world. Off the foggy coast of Nova Scotia lies a small, unassuming island that's consumed fortunes, broken hearts, and fueled one of history's longest-running treasure hunts. Oak Island's so-called money pit isn't just a hole in the ground. It's a riddle wrapped in layers of engineering so bizarre. It's either the work of genius or the most elaborate prank ever perpetrated. The story begins in 1795, when local teenager Daniel Maginnis stumbled upon a circular depression in the earth, its edges lined with flagstones and an old ship's pulley dangling from a tree above. What started as a casual dig soon revealed something far stranger. Every 10 feet, the shaft was blocked by platforms of oak logs, their surfaces smeared with a sticky, tar-like substance. By 30 feet down, searchers hit a stone slab etched with cryptic symbols later claimed to read, 40 feet below, 2 million pounds lie buried. That's when the water rushed in. This wasn't just groundwater. The instant the diggers breached that depth, the entire shaft flooded with seawater, as if triggered by some ancient mechanism. Modern excavations revealed an intricate network of tunnels connecting the pit to the ocean, designed to unleash a deluge the moment treasure hunters broke through. Who builds something like this? Theories range from pirate captains like William Kidd or Blackbeard stashing loot, to exiled Knights Templar hiding religious relics like the Ark of the Covenant. Some even point to the pit's precise geometry, aligned with constellations as they appeared in the 1500s, as proof of advanced, possibly Masonic engineering. Yet for all the feverish digging, what's actually been recovered is a trail of tantalizing, contradictory clues. In 1849, workers pulled up a scrap of parchment with faint ink markings. In 1866, a drill bit brought up 3 gold chain links. Then came the infamous 90-foot stone, another inscribed slab that mysteriously vanished before scholars could decode it. The deeper the searches went, the more absurd the obstacles became: layers of coconut fiber, a material foreign to Nova Scotia, wooden barriers reinforced with ship's spikes, even a flood tunnel system that reroutes attempts to pump water out. Skeptics, however, smell a rat. The earliest accounts of the money pit are riddled with inconsistencies, many recorded decades after the fact. That first inscribed stone. No reliable witness ever saw it. The gold chains, modern metallurgy suggests they might have been planted. Even the flooding could be natural, with the booby traps merely coincidental fractures in the island's porous limestone. The most damning theory: the pit was never meant to hide treasure. It was a 17th century salt mining operation, its shafts later romanticized by generations of hopeful hunters. Still, the allure refuses to die. Today, high-tech expeditions deploy sonar, satellite imaging, and underwater drones, uncovering everything from ancient Spanish coins to human bone fragments. One team even claims to have detected a massive metal chamber 200 feet down, though they've yet to reach it. After 2 centuries of false hopes and drained bank accounts, Oak Island's greatest secret might be its power to make us believe. Because whether there's gold below or just another dead end, the real treasure is the mystery itself, an itch that keeps us digging decade after decade into the unknown. In the dimly lit halls of Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, a single sheet of parchment has baffled historians for centuries: the Piri Reis Map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral who claimed it fused 20 ancient sources into one. At first glance, it's a typical early Renaissance chart, crowded with coastlines and annotations in delicate Arabic script. But look closer and the impossible emerges. The map depicts Antarctica's northern coastline, not as the icebound wasteland we know today, but as a lush, ice-free landmass with flowing rivers and jagged mountain ranges. The shock: Antarctica's terrain was hidden beneath miles of glacial ice for at least 12,000 years before its official discovery in 1820. So how could a 16th century cartographer have known its true shape? The map's creator, Piri Reis, left cryptic clues in his notes. He wrote of consulting charts from Alexander the Great's era and even referenced lost maps used by Christopher Columbus, hinting at a lineage of knowledge stretching back to antiquity. Modern comparisons between the Piri Reis map and sonar surveys of Antarctica's subglacial topography reveal eerie overlaps. The map's rendering of the Queen Maud Land coastline, for instance, matches current radar scans with unsettling precision, down to fjords and ridges now buried under sheets of ice a mile thick. Skeptics argue these similarities are coincidence, that the wavy lines are artistic flourishes or misdrawn South American features. Yet the map also plots mountain ranges in Antarctica's interior, places no human could have seen until satellite imaging exposed them in the 20th century. The most tantalizing theory: Piri Reis might have accessed fragments of a pre-glacial civilization's cartography. Ancient cultures like the Minoans or Phoenicians, renowned seafarers, could have mapped Antarctica during the last interglacial period when temperatures were higher and its coasts were exposed. These records might have survived in Alexandria's library or Byzantine archives, only to resurface in Ottoman hands. Others propose even wilder ideas, that the map preserves knowledge from a hypothetical advanced society like Atlantis, or that medieval scholars had access to now-forgotten geodesic techniques. But the plot thickens. In 1960, a professor overlaying the map on a modern globe found it only fits perfectly when plotted on a polar azimuthal projection, a technique Europeans wouldn't develop for another 200 years. Even more perplexing, the map's longitudinal accuracy suggests its creators could calculate longitude without clocks, a feat considered impossible before the 18th century. Yet for all its mysteries, the Piri Reis Map isn't flawless. Some coastal details are distorted or misplaced, and its portrayal of the Amazon River merges myth with geography, suggesting Piri Reis blended precise ancient data with the speculative lore of his time. That duality makes the map so compelling. It's both a masterpiece of accuracy and a mosaic of human curiosity, where hard science and lost legends collide. What lingers isn't just the question of how Piri Reis captured Antarctica's hidden face, but why so much ancient knowledge slipped through our fingers. If this single map survived, what else might have been lost? The oceans, after all, are vast, and history's deepest secrets often lie not in the answers we've found, but in the questions we've yet to ask. To the naked eye, it's just a piece of linen, a 14-foot-long cloth bearing the faint imprint of a bearded man with wounds matching the biblical account of crucifixion. But the Shroud of Turin is anything but ordinary. For centuries, this enigmatic relic has ignited fiery debates, pitting faith against science, tradition against skepticism. Is it the authentic burial shroud of Jesus Christ, miraculously imprinted with his image, or an elaborate medieval forgery crafted to deceive the faithful? The answer, it turns out, might be far more complicated than either side dares to admit. The shroud first appeared in historical records in 1354, when a French knight displayed it in a tiny church in Liary. Almost immediately, it drew accusations of fraud. The local bishop even claimed the artist confessed, though no evidence of that confession survives. Yet what's striking isn't just the controversy, it's the sheer anomaly of the image itself. Modern forensic analysis reveals details no medieval forger could have known. The wounds show precise anatomical accuracy, the crown of thorns as a cap of punctures rather than a circlet, the lance thrust between the ribs piercing the right atrium, the exact spot medical examiners identify as fatal in crucifixion cases. Even the bloodstains, when analyzed, behave like real blood, with serum halos and capillary diffusion patterns invisible to the naked eye. Then came the bombshell of 1988. Radiocarbon dating by 3 independent labs placed the shroud's origin between 1260 and 1390, squarely in the Middle Ages. Case closed. Not quite. Critics quickly pointed to flaws in the sampling process. The tested fragment came from a corner repeatedly handled and repaired over centuries, potentially contaminated by fire, damage from a 1532 chapel blaze, and even bacterial biofilm. Fast forward to 2019, when new forensic tests applied microchemical analysis to fibers from the shroud's main body. These suggested the cloth could date back to the time of Christ, its flax fibers showing a pollen spectrum matching 1st century Judea. The most haunting evidence, though, lies in the image's formation. Despite decades of study, no one's replicated how the faint, straw-yellow discoloration penetrates only the topmost fibers, an effect requiring precision beyond medieval methods. Some scientists propose a rare form of radiation, like a burst of ultraviolet light, might have caused it. Others point to the shroud's 3-dimensional encoded information, detectable by modern imaging software, a feature no painting or rubbing could produce. Perhaps the most compelling twist comes from history itself. While the shroud's provenance before the 14th century is murky, there are tantalizing gaps. First century Edessa, now in Turkey, venerated a mysterious image of God cloth as early as the 6th century. Byzantine records describe it as a tetradiplon, a doubled-in 4 linen, exactly like the shroud's fold marks. Could this be the same artifact, lost and rediscovered across centuries? The shroud defies easy answers. It's a riddle wrapped in faith, science, and time. Whether divine or human in origin, its power lies in the questions it forces us to ask about history, belief, and the fragile lines between them. And until someone unravels its final secret, it remains history's most sacred mystery. For centuries, the Great Pyramid of Giza stood as a silent titan, its secrets locked beneath millions of limestone blocks. But recent scans have shattered the illusion that we've uncovered all its mysteries. High-tech surveys using muon radiography, a cosmic ray imaging technique, revealed not one, but several hidden voids lurking deep within the pyramid's heart. The largest, dubbed the Big Void, stretches nearly 100 feet long, hovering mysteriously above the Grand Gallery. Its purpose no one knows. Some speculate it could be a concealed burial chamber, a sealed repository for sacred artifacts, or even an architectural counterweight designed to distribute the pyramid's immense weight. What's undeniable is that these spaces were deliberately hidden, their entrances seamlessly blended into the surrounding stone, invisible to the naked eye. The most tantalizing theory involves the pyramid's original function. Mainstream Egyptology insists it's a pharaoh's tomb, yet not a single mummy or burial inscription has ever been found inside. Alternative researchers propose the voids might hold evidence of the pyramid's true role, perhaps as an energy generator, an ancient observatory, or a repository of lost knowledge. Intriguingly, thermal scans show temperature anomalies in the void's vicinity, hinting at unusual materials or airflow patterns inconsistent with solid stone. Could these chambers contain metallic objects like the legendary Iron Throne mentioned in pyramid texts, or something even more unexpected? So why hasn't Egypt greenlit full-scale exploration? The answer is a mix of caution and controversy. Drilling into the pyramid risks irreversible damage to a monument that survived 4.5 millennia. The 2017 attempt to probe the void with a tiny camera yielded only a frustrating glimpse of another limestone wall, proof that the pyramid guards its secrets jealously. Others whisper of political hesitance. What if the voids rewrite history, challenging Egypt's carefully curated narrative of its ancient past? The discovery of non-Egyptian artifacts or pre-pharaonic construction could upend entire academic careers. Meanwhile, roboticists and archaeologists push for non-invasive solutions: swarms of micro-drones, fiber-optic cameras thinner than a human hair, anything to peek behind the veil without disturbing a single stone. Because the greatest wonder isn't just what these chambers hide, but why the ancients went to such lengths to conceal them. Every unanswered question whispers the same truth: the Great Pyramid still has stories to tell. And until we're ready to listen, its deepest secrets remain just out of reach. In the summer of 1587, a ship arrived at Roanoke Island off the coast of what's now North Carolina, carrying fresh supplies for England's first attempted colony in the New World. But when the crew stepped ashore, they found not a bustling settlement but a ghost town. The 115 men, women, and children who had been left behind 2 years earlier, including Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the Americas, had vanished without a trace. The only clues were 2 words carved into a wooden post: Croatone, and mysteriously, Crow, on a nearby tree. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just an entire community erased from history. For centuries, the fate of the lost colony has been one of America's most enduring mysteries. Early theories painted a grim picture: starvation, massacre, or a desperate escape attempt gone wrong. But the real story might be far more fascinating than mere tragedy. Recent archaeological digs and DNA studies suggest the colonists didn't perish at all. They may have done the unthinkable, abandoned their European identity entirely and assimilated into local native tribes. Take the Croatoan carving. Far from a desperate plea for help, it was likely a deliberate message. The Croatan people, a friendly Algonquian tribe, lived on what's now Hatteras Island, just 50 miles south. Colonial leader John White had instructed the settlers to leave a Maltese cross if they were forced to leave under duress. No cross was found. Instead, Croatoan matched White's prearranged signal for a voluntary relocation. Excavations on Hatteras have unearthed Elizabethan artifacts buried alongside native tools, a brass signet ring, gun parts, and even fragments of English pottery mingled with traditional Croatan items. Even more telling are the oral histories of the Lumbee tribe, who claim descent from the lost settlers. Their ancestors spoke of light-eyed, English-speaking relatives with surnames like Dial and Berry, names that trace back to Roanoke's original roster. Physical evidence supports this. In 2020, a team analyzing Lumbee DNA found rare genetic markers consistent with 16th-century English populations. The most compelling clue, though, lies hidden in a 16th-century map. In 2012, researchers examining John White's original watercolors with ultraviolet light spotted a tiny, concealed symbol, a patch of paper covering the outline of a fort 50 miles inland. Ground-penetrating radar scans later revealed remains of a settlement near the Chowan River, exactly where the map suggested. Pottery shards found their blend English and native styles, hinting at a mixed community. So why didn't the colonists return to Roanoke when English ships finally returned? The answer might be simple: they didn't want to. Facing starvation and isolation, integration offered survival. By the time rescuers arrived, they'd forged new lives, trading their stiff doublets for deerskin, their prayers for powwows. The real mystery isn't what happened to the lost colony, it's why we've been so reluctant to accept that sometimes the past isn't lost. It's just waiting for us to listen. On the night of August 15, 1977, a radio telescope in Ohio picked up something that should not have existed. The signal was so extraordinary that astronomer Jerry Amon, scanning the data printout days later, circled the burst of code in red pen and scribbled, "Wow." Beside it, giving birth to the most tantalizing mystery in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. For 72 seconds, a narrowband radio pulse blared from the constellation Sagittarius at a frequency of 1,420 MHz, a channel scientists had long hypothesized aliens might use because it's naturally quiet, free from cosmic noise. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it vanished. What made the wow signal so electrifying wasn't just its strength, 30 times louder than the background static, but its precision. It matched every criterion of an artificial transmission, a sharp, focused frequency with no natural explanation. Stars don't emit radio waves that way. Pulsars scatter their signals across multiple frequencies. Even comets, a popular skeptic's excuse, produce broadband static, not a laser-like burst. And here's the kicker. The signal's intensity rose and fell exactly as you'd expect if it were originating from a fixed point in space, sweeping past Earth as the telescope's antenna moved. In other words, it behaved like a beacon. For 45 years, astronomers have chased shadows trying to replicate the finding. They've scanned the same patch of sky over 100 times using more sensitive equipment. They've ruled out satellites, military experiments, and even passing airplanes. Yet silence has been the only reply. The most promising lead emerged in 2020 when researchers proposed a sun-like star 2,000 light-years away, sitting eerily close to the signal's origin point. But follow-up observations found no technosignatures, no repeating pulses, no modulated patterns, nothing to suggest intelligence. Then there's the timing. The wow signal appeared during one of humanity's first serious attempts to listen for cosmic neighbors, as if whatever sent it knew we were finally paying attention. Some theorists argue it could have been a one-time event, an alien lighthouse briefly flickering, or a directed message aimed elsewhere that we just happened to intercept. Others wonder if it was a fragment of a longer transmission, most of it lost in the void. But perhaps the most haunting possibility is that we missed our chance. The Arecibo telescope, capable of sending a reply, collapsed in 2020, leaving Earth functionally mute. The WOW signal remains a cosmic flare in the dark, a single, brilliant hello with no one left to answer. And until another one arrives, we're left staring at the stars, wondering if we were ever truly alone. The Knights Templar weren't just warriors, they were financial revolutionaries. Founded in 1119 to protect Christian pilgrims in the Holy Land, this legendary order quickly morphed into history's first multinational banking empire. Picture this: a medieval traveler could deposit gold at a Templar outpost in Paris, receive an encrypted note, and withdraw the equivalent value in Jerusalem. No bulky coin sacks, no highway robbers. Their system was so advanced, it laid the groundwork for modern checks and wire transfers, but their true power lay in secrecy. They coded account ledgers with ciphers even modern cryptographers struggled to crack, and their fortified treasuries became the vaults of kings. At their peak, they managed the wealth of entire nations, including the English and French crowns. That's when the trouble started, because money breeds envy, and the Templars had too much of both. King Philip IV of France, drowning in debt to the order, hatched a plot to destroy them. On Friday, October 13, 1307, he ordered simultaneous raids across Europe. Templars were arrested en masse, accused of blasphemy, heresy, even worshipping a mysterious idol called Baphomet. Under torture, many confessed to outlandish crimes, though historians now believe these were coerced fabrications. The order was officially dissolved, its leaders burned at the stake. But here's where the story twists. Most of their legendary treasure, gold, relics, even the rumored Ark of the Covenant, was never found. That's because the Templars saw it coming. For decades, scholars have pieced together evidence of a secret evacuation. The night before the raids, a convoy of wagons allegedly slipped out of Paris, escorted by armed knights. Where did it go? Some say Scotland, where Templar ships were spotted docking weeks later. Others point to Portugal, where the order simply rebranded as the Order of Christ, keeping their lands and influence. The most tantalizing theory involves North America. A coded Templar map, later studied by Columbus, supposedly marked a territory they called Vinland centuries before Leif Erikson. But the real shocker, their banking network never truly died. Shadowy records suggest Templar assets funded everything from Renaissance art to early colonial expeditions. Even today, their symbols haunt modern finance. The double-barred cross appears in bank logos, and their strict auditing practices inspired stock market regulations. Whether they survived as a clandestine society or simply imprinted their genius on history, one thing's certain: the Templars didn't just keep secrets. They built them into the foundations of the world we know, and somewhere, perhaps, their gold still waits. Deep in the jungles of Costa Rica's Diquis Delta, something extraordinary lies half buried in the mud. Perfectly spherical stone monuments, some as tall as a person, others small enough to cradle in your arms. These are the stone spheres of Costa Rica, and they're one of archaeology's most perplexing enigmas. Carved with uncanny precision from hard volcanic rock, their surfaces are so smooth they feel almost polished. Their curves so flawless that modern engineers struggle to explain how ancient artisans achieved such geometric perfection without metal tools. Who created these spheres and why? The indigenous Boruca people, who inhabited the region when Spanish colonizers arrived, claimed they had always been there, gifts from the gods or relics of a forgotten civilization. Carbon dating places their construction between 600 and 1500 AD, but beyond that, the trail goes cold. No chisels, no workshops, not even a single tool mark left behind to reveal their makers' methods. The closest clues come from nearby settlements, where researchers found stone workshops and partially carved spheres abandoned mid-process, hinting at a sudden, unexplained halt to production. Then there's the mystery of their arrangement. Many spheres were discovered in precise alignments, clustered in groups of 4 or lined up in straight rows leading to ceremonial sites. Some formations mirrored constellations, while others pointed to significant solstice events. But here's where the puzzle twists. When archaeologists first documented them in the 1930s, hundreds of spheres had already been looted or destroyed. Banana plantations bulldozed them, treasure hunters dynamited them in search of hidden gold, and local myths claimed breaking them would release cursed spirits. By the time scholars intervened, nearly half had vanished or been damaged beyond repair. The most haunting question isn't just what they represented, it's why so much effort was poured into their destruction. Were they feared, revered, or simply misunderstood? Modern studies using ground-penetrating radar suggest many more may still lie hidden beneath the jungle floor, waiting to be rediscovered. Until then, these silent stone sentinels remain a testament to a lost chapter of human ingenuity, one that challenges our assumptions about the past and whispers of secrets still buried in the earth. In the quiet English village of Woolpit during the 12th century, a harvest season took a turn into the realm of the inexplicable. Villagers tending their fields stumbled upon 2 children huddled near a wolf pit, the very feature that gave the village its name. But these were no ordinary lost youngsters. Their skin was a vivid, otherworldly green, their clothing woven from unfamiliar fabrics, and their speech a language no one could recognize. According to chronicler William of Newburgh, the pair, brother and sister, were terrified, trembling at the sight of ordinary food until someone offered them raw beans, which they devoured with desperate relief. At first, the villagers assumed the children were sick or cursed, but as weeks passed, their condition defied simple explanations. The girl, who outlived her brother, gradually lost her emerald hue as she adapted to her new home. Once she learned English, she recounted a bizarre origin story. She and her brother came from a place called St. Martin's Land, where the sun never rose and all the inhabitants shared their green complexion. She described a perpetual twilight world accessible through a cave where people lived in an eerie, sunless existence. Then one day, hearing the sound of bells, perhaps from Woolpit's church, they wandered into the light and found themselves trapped in our world. Skeptics have long debated what truly happened. One prevailing theory suggests the children were Flemish immigrants, displaced by violence during a period of ethnic cleansing in nearby Norfolk. Their green skin could have been a symptom of chloroses, a form of anemia caused by malnutrition, which gives sufferers a sickly pallor. The unfamiliar language, a Flemish dialect utterly foreign to English ears. As for their claimed homeland, mistranslation or childhood fantasy might have twisted their account. Perhaps St. Martin's Land referred to a Flemish enclave named for the saint, and the eternal twilight was a child's interpretation of dense forest cover or underground refuges where their community hid. But another, wilder hypothesis refuses to die, that the children weren't from this world at all. Some point to their claimed subterranean origin as evidence of a parallel dimension or even extraterrestrial contact. The green skin, the intolerance to normal food, the description of a sunless world, it all echoes modern accounts of alien encounters. Could Woolpit's visitors have been accidental dimension hoppers or the survivors of a lost subterranean civilization? Even medieval writers were divided. Ralph of Coggeshall, another chronicler, insisted their story was no fable, while later scholars dismissed it as allegory. The girl, once assimilated, lived a normal life, even marrying a local man, but her origins remained a mystery until her death. No grave has ever been found, and with it, perhaps, the last physical link to the truth. Today, the green children linger in folklore, a tantalizing what-if at the edges of history. Because whether they were refugees, disease victims, or something far stranger, their tale forces us to confront how easily the past obscures its outliers. After all, history isn't just written by the winners. It's filtered through the assumptions of those who never thought to ask the right questions. And sometimes the most extraordinary truths slip away simply because no one believed they were possible. Rising from a quiet Georgia field like a modern-day Stonehenge, the Georgia Guidestones were one of the most cryptic monuments of the 20th century. Erected in 1980 under the alias of R.C. Christian, a name many believe was a nod to the enigmatic Rosicrucian order, this granite structure stood 19 feet tall, its 6 slabs inscribed with 10 commandments for a post-apocalyptic world, translated into 8 languages. But these weren't guidelines for personal morality. They were chillingly pragmatic, with directives like maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature and guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. The stark, almost clinical tone sparked immediate controversy. Who were these shadowy architects, and were their words a blueprint for survival or something far darker? The mystery only deepened when investigators traced the monument's origins. A well-dressed man using the pseudonym R.C. Christian had walked into Elberton Granite Finishing Company, paying in cash and delivering precise architectural plans. He claimed to represent a small group of loyal Americans, but refused further identification. Even the banker handling the transaction later admitted the funds were funneled through layers of untraceable accounts. Conspiracy theorists pounced. Was this the work of a secret society, a globalist cabal? Some pointed to the Guidestones' alignment with celestial events, noting how certain slots framed the solstice sun, much like ancient megaliths. Others decoded numerical patterns in the inscriptions, finding eerie parallels to population control agendas and even predictions tied to the Mayan calendar. Then came the bombshell. In the pre-dawn hours of July 6, 2022, explosions tore through the monument, reducing one panel to rubble. Security footage captured a blur of movement, a car, a flash, but no clear suspects. Authorities later deemed it vandalism, but the timing raised eyebrows. The destruction came amid a surge in far-right conspiracy theories, branding the Guidestones as satanic for their depopulation rhetoric. Some speculated the attack was a cover-up, silencing a monument that had grown too revealing. What lingers now are the fragments, both literal and philosophical. A single surviving slab sits in storage, its message fragmented but not forgotten. Whether the Guidestones were a warning, a manifesto, or an elaborate psychological experiment, their legacy forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. How far would humanity go to ensure its own survival? And in a world teetering on crisis, are the most unsettling ideas sometimes the ones we need to hear? The stones may be gone, but their shadow still stretches long, a silent provocation carved not just in granite, but in the collective unease of a species staring down its own future. Weighing in at a staggering 165 pounds and stretching nearly 3 feet in length, the Codex Gigas isn't just the largest medieval manuscript in existence. It's a book shrouded in whispers of the supernatural. Known as the Devil's Bible, this colossal tome, penned in the early 13th century, contains a chilling full-page illustration of Satan himself, grinning menacingly amid a crimson backdrop. But the terrifying portrait is just the beginning. Legend claims the entire manuscript was written by a single monk in a single night with supernatural assistance. The story goes like this. A Benedictine monk, sentenced to be walled alive for breaking his vows, struck a desperate bargain. He promised to create a work that would glorify his monastery forever, compiling all human knowledge into one volume, if only the devil would lend him the strength to finish it before dawn. As the hours ticked by, his quill flew across the vellum, scribbling not just the Bible but medical treatises, historical chronicles, even exorcism rites. Then, in a final act of twisted gratitude, the monk added the infamous devil portrait, forever binding the book to its dark origins. But how much of this is true? Historians note eerie consistencies in the handwriting, almost as if the entire text really was written by one person in an impossibly short time frame. The ink and vellum match early 13th century Bohemia, and the script shows no signs of aging or tremor, despite the months such labor should have required. Then there's the devil's page itself, which radiates a strange aura. Infrared scans reveal it was deliberately placed opposite a heavenly image of the New Jerusalem, as if taunting viewers with the duality of salvation and damnation. The manuscript's turbulent history only deepens the mystery. Stolen by Swedish forces during the 30 Years' War, it vanished into noble collections before resurfacing in a royal library, where librarians reported hearing faint scratching sounds from its pages at night. Visitors who mocked the devil's image allegedly suffered misfortunes, illnesses, accidents, even financial ruin. Modern scientists dismiss these tales, yet the book remains handled with gloved hands, its pages turned only with special permission. What lingers isn't just the question of how the Codex Gigas was created, but why its dark legend endures. Is it a medieval cautionary tale about the dangers of pride? A coded rebellion against religious dogma, or proof that some truth, supernatural or not, are best left bound in parchment, their secrets fading with time? The Devil's Bible doesn't offer answers, it only asks in ink and whispers whether we're brave enough to keep turning the pages. Beneath the sun-baked plains of Cappadocia, Turkey, lies a labyrinth so vast it could conceal an entire civilization. The ancient underground city of Derinkuyu isn't just a few tunnels, it's an 18-level metropolis plunging nearly 300 feet into the earth, complete with ventilation shafts, wineries, chapels, and even livestock stables carved directly into the volcanic rock. Built over 2,500 years ago, this subterranean stronghold could house up to 20,000 people for months at a time, all hidden from the world above. But here's the chilling part, we've only uncovered a fraction of its true scale. What drove an entire society to live in perpetual darkness? The answer lies in Cappadocia's brutal history. This region was a crossroads of empires, constantly ravaged by invaders from the Mongols to the Romans. The underground cities weren't just shelters, they were fortresses of last resort. Hidden entrances disguised as ordinary wells could be sealed with massive stone wheels at a moment's notice, while narrow, twisting passageways forced attackers to crawl single file, where defenders could pick them off one by one. The air shafts, some stretching over 150 feet to the surface, were ingeniously designed to be undetectable from above, their openings camouflaged among natural rock formations. Yet the most baffling mystery isn't how they built these cities, it's how they kept them secret. Derinkuyu connects to at least 200 other underground complexes via a network of tunnels stretching for miles, some wide enough for 3 people to walk abreast. Modern ground-penetrating radar has revealed chambers still packed with unexplored artifacts, their doorways blocked by deliberate collapses. Local legends speak of even deeper levels, possibly reaching underground rivers or geothermal heat sources, but archaeologists hesitate to excavate further. The soft tufa rock is dangerously unstable, and entire sections could crumble at the slightest disturbance. What's truly unnerving is realizing these cities weren't unique. From China's Yeadong cave dwellings to the vast subterranean labyrinths beneath Naples, humanity's instinct to burrow runs deep. In Matera, Italy, an ancient underground city remained inhabited until the 1950s, its residents clinging to a troglodyte lifestyle in defiance of modernity. Even more bizarre are the recently discovered complexes in the American Southwest, where ancestral pueblones carved entire granaries and ceremonial chambers into sheer cliff faces, not for defense but as sacred spaces tied to their cosmology. The lingering question isn't just how these cities function, but why we stopped building them. Did we outgrow our fear of the surface, or did something darker drive us into the light? As climate change and modern warfare make subterranean living a plausible future again, Derinkuyu stands as a silent warning, or perhaps a blueprint, because if history has taught us anything, it's that humanity's greatest survival strategies often lie buried, waiting to be rediscovered when we need them most. On the morning of June 30th, 1908, a fireball tore across the skies of Siberia with the force of 1,000 suns. Near the Podkamennaya Tunguska River, reindeer herders watched in horror as a blast wave, later estimated at 10 to 15 megatons, flattened 80 million trees across 800 square miles. Windows shattered 600 miles away. Seismographs in Europe registered the shock as an earthquake. For nights afterward, the skies glowed so brightly that Londoners could read newspapers outdoors at midnight. Yet when investigators finally reached the remote site, they found no crater, no meteorite fragments, just a haunting radial pattern of scorched, uprooted trunks pointing away from ground zero. The absence of impact debris launched a century of speculation. The leading theory, of course, involves a space rock, perhaps a stony meteoroid exploding 5 miles up, its shockwave mimicking a nuclear detonation. But here's the catch: no trace of extraterrestrial material has ever been recovered, despite multiple expeditions sifting through the peat and permafrost. Alternative explanations spiral into the extraordinary. Could it have been a chunk of antimatter annihilating itself in the atmosphere, a rogue black hole passing through Earth? Some even point to Nikola Tesla's experiments with wireless energy transmission, suggesting his Wardenclyffe Tower might have accidentally unleashed a plasma beam across the globe. Tesla notably requested maps of Siberia just weeks before the event. The most compelling twist, though, comes from lake sediments. In 2007, researchers analyzing soil cores from the blast zone discovered microscopic mineral spheres rich in iridium, a metal rare on Earth but common in asteroids. Yet these particles weren't scattered randomly, they clustered in layers dating precisely to 1908. This hints at a comet fragment, one made mostly of ice that vaporized instantly, leaving only cosmic dust as its calling card. But the Tunguska event's true legacy isn't just scientific, it's existential. Had the explosion occurred 4 hours later, it would have annihilated St. Petersburg. Instead, it serves as a silent warning. The next cosmic intruder might not strike an empty forest. The universe keeps secrets, and some, like the fireball over Siberia, refuse to surrender them fully, no matter how hard we look. The Amazon rainforest has swallowed empires whole, leaving behind nothing but whispers, but few have chased those whispers as obsessively as Colonel Percy Fawcett. In 1925, the British explorer vanished into the green hell of the Mato Grosso, convinced he was days away from finding what he called Z, a lost city of gold, cobbled streets and towering temples, hidden where no European had ever tread. His final letter home crackled with certainty. "We will cross this region, then reach the city. You need have no fear of failure." Then silence. Rescue missions found only cryptic clues, a compass, a rusted nameplate before the jungle closed around them too. For decades, Fawcett's fate became a cautionary tale, proof that the Amazon's depths held only death, not ruins. But what if he wasn't wrong? Modern archaeology has unearthed something astonishing. The Amazon wasn't a pristine wilderness but a cradle of sprawling urban networks. Satellite imagery and LiDAR scans laser mapping that strips away the canopy revealed geometric earthworks, causeways, and plazas across Bolivia and Brazil. One site, Cuhacugu, matches Fawcett's descriptions eerily well. Concentric rings of ditches, evidence of agriculture supporting tens of thousands, even remnants of roads. The kicker, it lies just miles from where Fawcett's last campfire smoldered. Yet the real revelation isn't just that cities existed, it's how they thrived. Contrary to the untouched jungle myth, ancient Amazonians engineered their environment. They enriched thin rainforest soil with charcoal and pottery shards, creating fertile, dark earth that still boosts crop yields today. Their settlements clustered around man-made reservoirs, and their roads radiated outward like spokes, linking satellite villages in a web of trade. These weren't isolated tribes, they were civilizations as complex as the Maya, just built in wood and earth instead of stone, materials that melted back into the forest when disease and conquest arrived. So why hasn't Z been definitively found? The Amazon guards its secrets fiercely. Rot devours everything but ceramics and stone. River courses shift, burying sites under silt. Even with LiDAR, less than 20% of the basin has been scanned. And then there's the human factor. Fawcett's own notes, riddled with indigenous legends and psychic visions, blur the line between fact and obsession. His Z might have been a composite of real places and fever dreams scattered across thousands of square miles. The cruelest irony, indigenous oral histories have spoken of these cities for centuries. The Guaycurú people, descendants of Cuacugu's builders, still point to mounds they call the House of the Ancestors. Fawcett, in his rush to claim glory, might have missed the truth whispered by the very people he hired as guides. Today, archaeologists work alongside tribes, piecing together a map of the Amazon not as a void, but as a graveyard of gardens and grand plazas. A lost world that's only beginning to give up its dead. And somewhere in that tangle of vines and legend, Percy Fawcett's bones lie waiting, not far from the city he sought but never saw. In February 1959, 9 experienced hikers set up camp on the snowy slopes of Russia's Ural Mountains, their tent flapping against the bitter wind. By morning, they were dead scattered across the frozen wilderness in conditions so gruesome, the case was sealed for decades. This is the Dyatlov Pass incident, a mystery that defies logic. The official report blamed an unknown compelling force, but the details whisper of something far stranger. Start with the scene itself. The tent was sliced open from the inside, as if the hikers fled in terror. Their footprints in the snow told a frantic story barefoot, some clad only in underwear, as though they'd bolted straight from sleep into sub-zero darkness. 5 died of hypothermia near a cedar tree, their fingers blackened by frostbite, but the others, broken ribs, a missing tongue, skull fractures with no external wounds, injuries more consistent with a car crash than a hiking accident. One victim's eyes were gone, her lips stained brown as if she'd bitten into something toxic. And then there were the radiation traces. Forensic teams found elevated radiation on some of the clothing, sparking Cold War-era whispers of secret military tests. Conspiracy theorists ran wild. Had the hikers stumbled upon a crashed UFO, intercepted a covert missile launch? Soviet files from the era remained stubbornly classified, fueling speculation that authorities hid the truth. Yet the most plausible explanations are rooted in nature, just not the kind we like to imagine. Take infrasound, for instance. Under the right conditions, wind whipping through mountain passes can generate low-frequency sound waves undetectable to human ears. These vibrations trigger primal panic, a biological fire alarm explaining why the hikers tore through their tent as if chased by ghosts. Then there's avalanche dynamics, not a conventional snowslide, but a rare slab avalanche that leaves no debris. The pressure wave alone could have shattered ribs, while the hikers' injuries worsened as they stumbled blindly through the night. But the lingering question isn't just how they died, it's why the case refuses closure. Even declassified documents are heavily redacted, and recent expeditions continue to vanish under eerie circumstances. In 2019, investigators returned to the pass with high-tech gear, only to abandon their search after equipment failures and sudden storms. The mountains, it seems, guard their secrets jealously. Whether the truth involves military cover-ups, natural phenomena, or something science can't yet name, Dyatlov Pass stands as a chilling reminder. Some puzzles aren't meant to be solved. If the Baghdad Battery truly generated electricity, what could ancient civilizations have done with it? The answer might be hiding in plain sight. on the surfaces of objects we've admired for centuries. Take the gilded artifacts from Mesopotamia and Persia, some dating back 2,000 years. Many show micron-thin layers of gold or silver bonded to base metals with a precision that defies traditional methods like mercury gilding. Modern experiments prove electroplating could explain this. When replicas of the Baghdad Battery are filled with vinegar or grape juice, they produce enough current to deposit a flawless metallic coating onto submerged objects within hours. A team at Herten, Germany, demonstrated this in 1978, electroplating a silver statuette using nothing but a clay jar, copper, iron, and lemon juice, recreating a process that could have adorned ancient jewelry or religious idols. But electroplating might not have been the only application. Scrolls from Alexandria describe medical treatments involving electric fish to numb pain, a primitive form of electrotherapy. Could the Baghdad Battery have served a similar purpose? Researchers at the University of Pennsylvania tested the theory, applying a weak current from a replica battery to acupuncture points. The results were startling: reduced inflammation and accelerated healing in test subjects, mirroring descriptions in Greco-Roman medical texts. Ancient physicians might have stumbled onto bioelectricity centuries before Galvani's famous frog legs twitched. The most provocative evidence comes from unassuming artifacts. A cache of Parthian-era scalpels discovered near modern-day Baghdad shows traces of acidic residue and microscopic metal bonding. When subjected to X-ray fluorescence, the blades revealed uneven silver deposits, exactly what you'd expect from hand-held electroplating. Even more telling are temple reliefs in Dendera, Egypt, depicting priests holding bulb-like objects with snaking wires. While mainstream archaeology dismisses them as symbolic lotus flowers, engineers at MIT reconstructed them as primitive glow tubes. Filled with argon gas and powered by a Baghdad-style cell, they emitted a faint, eerie light enough to illuminate sacred rituals or underground tombs. Skeptics argue these are coincidences, that ancient craftsmen achieved similar results with chemical pastes. Yet the sheer diversity of evidence, from gilded artifacts to medical texts, paints a compelling picture. If just one culture harnessed electricity, even accidentally, it rewrites our assumptions about technological progress, because innovation isn't always a straight line. Sometimes it's a spark in the dark, flickering briefly before disappearing for millennia, waiting to be rediscovered. For decades, the Voynich Manuscript seemed to laugh in the face of modern science, but artificial intelligence might finally be turning the tide. In 2017, a team of Canadian researchers fed the manuscript's bizarre script into an algorithm designed to recognize patterns in unknown languages. The AI didn't just identify clusters of symbols that behaved like words, it detected something startling. The text followed Zipf's law, a linguistic principle observed in all human languages where the frequency of word usage forms a specific mathematical curve. This was the first concrete evidence that the manuscript wasn't gibberish. It had structure, rules, a hidden logic waiting to be unraveled. Then came the real breakthrough. In 2021, German linguist Dr. Klaus Schmey applied neural networks trained on hundreds of historical ciphers. The AI flagged a segment of the manuscript's herbal section as potentially containing a mix of Latin and medieval German, with words like corrector, correction, and Pieflans, plant embedded in the cipher. The most tantalizing find, a recurring symbol sequence that translated to golden root, a term medieval herbalists used for ginseng, a plant native to Asia, yet depicted in the manuscript alongside European flora. Could this be evidence of lost botanical knowledge traded along the Silk Road? But the plot thickens. A separate team at the University of Alberta took a radical approach, treating the manuscript as a phonetic code rather than a written language. Their algorithm compared the symbols to sounds in spoken languages from the 15th century, revealing possible links to extinct dialects of northern Italy. Suddenly, the manuscript's odd illustrations made new sense. The so-called astronomical section might not depict stars at all, but rather sound charts, visual representations of vowel shifts in a forgotten oral tradition. Yet for every step forward, the manuscript pushes back. In 2023, cryptographers attempting to decode it with quantum computing hit a wall. The text appears to use layers of encryption like a Russian nesting doll of ciphers. Some pages might be written left to right, others top to bottom, with symbols that change meaning based on their position. It's as if the author anticipated future decoders and engineered the ultimate puzzle. What keeps scholars glued to this 400-year-old riddle isn't just the thrill of the chase, it's the dawning realization that cracking it could rewrite the history of knowledge. Because if the Voynich Manuscript really does encode forgotten languages, lost medicinal recipes, or even early scientific concepts, it's not just a curiosity. It's a time capsule, one that might hold secrets far more valuable than anyone imagined. And with each technological leap, we're not just decoding symbols, we're resurrecting voices the past tried desperately to silence. The Great Pyramid stands as a monument not just to ancient engineering, but to the limits of our imagination. While mainstream Egyptology insists its 2 million blocks were hauled up ramps by thousands of laborers, stubborn gaps in that theory have fueled radical alternatives, some bordering on science fiction. Consider sound levitation, an idea ripped straight from legend. Tibetan monks speak of acoustic levitation, used to move massive stones, and hieroglyphs in the temple of Edfu describe the god Thoth guiding blocks with vibrations. Modern experiments lend eerie credibility to this. In 2018, researchers at the University of Bristol demonstrated how ultrasonic waves could suspend small objects in midair. Scale that up with resonating chambers beneath the pyramid, and suddenly the idea of chanting priests guiding 100-ton blocks into place seems less absurd. Then there's the poured concrete hypothesis, championed by materials scientist Joseph Davidovits. His analysis revealed microscopic air bubbles and mineral ratios in pyramid stones that match man-made geopolymer concrete, not natural limestone. The clincher, fragments from the pyramids contain strands of organic material, possible remnants of wooden molds. Ancient texts support this with the famine stele, describing a recipe for binding stone using natron, lime, and water. If true, it would mean the Egyptians didn't just quarry stone, they revolutionized chemistry 2,000 years before modern concrete. But the most electrifying theory involves water power. Archaeologist Chris Massey points to silt deposits around the pyramid's base, evidence of an ancient canal system. His model suggests counterweighted barges floated blocks up Nile-fed waterways, then hydraulic lifts hoisted them using the pyramid's own ascending chambers as internal locks. This would explain the pyramid's mysterious air shafts, which align perfectly with water pressure dynamics. Even Herodotus hinted at this, describing machines made of short planks, used to raise stones, possibly primitive water screws. Each theory carries its own revolution. Sound levitation rewrites physics, geopolymers redefine ancient science, hydraulics reveal lost technology. Yet perhaps the greatest secret isn't how the pyramid was built, but why we're so resistant to reimagining the past. Because if a single monument can shatter our assumptions about history, what else might we have gotten wrong? The stones won't speak, but their silence is louder than ever. The shadow of the Knights Templar stretches far beyond their medieval downfall. Some believe it reaches into the very secret societies that shape our modern world. Among the most persistent theories is their connection to the Freemasons, an organization that emerged centuries later with rituals and symbols eerily reminiscent of the Templars' clandestine practices. When Freemasonry first gained prominence in the early 1700s, its founding documents spoke of ancient wisdom passed down through generations. But where did this knowledge truly originate? Historians point to key overlaps: the Masonic obsession with Solomon's Temple, the same sacred site the Templars once claimed as their headquarters. Both groups employed coded handshakes, geometric symbolism, and a hierarchical structure divided into degrees of initiation. Even the Masonic legend of Hiram Abiff, a master architect murdered for refusing to reveal secret knowledge, parallels the Templars' own martyrdom at the hands of King Philip. Dig deeper and the trail grows more intriguing. After the Templars' suppression, surviving members allegedly sought refuge in Scotland, where they influenced the nascent stonemason guilds. Rosslyn Chapel, built in the mid-15th century, brims with carvings of Templar crosses and green men, a possible architectural breadcrumb left by fugitive knights. Fast forward to the birth of speculative Freemasonry in the 1700s, and suddenly these motifs resurface in lodges across Europe. Even the Masonic apron, a symbolic leather garment, mirrors the Templars' protective mantles worn during sacred rites. Yet the links don't end there. The Bavarian Illuminati, founded in 1776, adopted Templar-like secrecy, embedding themselves within Masonic lodges to spread Enlightenment ideals or subversive plots depending on who you ask. Their founder, Adam Weishaupt, modeled his order's structure on the Templars' military discipline, even adopting the codename Spartacus in homage to the warrior monks. Modern conspiracy theorists take this further, suggesting groups like the Bilderbergs or Skull and Bones are the Templars' spiritual heirs, wielding financial and political influence just as the order once did. But here's the twist: the evidence is a double-edged sword. While some Masonic rituals undeniably echo Templar traditions, historians argue this could be deliberate myth-building, a way for 18th-century Freemasons to cloak themselves in the mystique of a legendary past. After all, secret societies thrive on borrowed prestige. The truth may lie somewhere in between, not a direct lineage but a tapestry of inspiration where fragments of Templar lore were repurposed, reimagined, and reinvented by later groups hungry for legitimacy. What remains undeniable is the Templars' enduring grip on our collective imagination. Whether they secretly survived or simply became a template for future fraternities, their legacy lingers not just in history books but in the whispered rituals of boardrooms, lodges, and corridors of power. And perhaps that's their final secret: the idea of the Templars is far more powerful than the reality ever was. History isn't just what we're taught, it's what's been hidden, buried, or deliberately erased. Think about the revelations we've uncovered today. Ancient batteries humming with electricity 2,000 years before Volta, medieval manuscripts written in uncrackable codes, lost cities swallowed by jungles, and entire legions vanishing without a trace. These aren't just curiosities, they're fractures in the official narrative, proof that the past is far stranger and more sophisticated than we've been led to believe. Why would anyone suppress these truths? Look at the patterns. Knowledge is power, and those in control have always known it. The Library of Alexandria didn't just burn by accident. Its destruction erased entire schools of thought. The Templars weren't just disbanded. Their financial genius was dismantled because it threatened kings. Even now, governments restrict access to archaeological sites, dismiss anomalous artifacts as hoaxes, or spin mysteries into myths, anything to keep the past neatly packaged. Because once you realize how much has been lost, you start asking dangerous questions. What else don't we know, and who benefits from our ignorance? But here's the thing: the truth has a way of resurfacing. A farmer stumbles upon the Antikythera Mechanism in a shipwreck. A satellite spots geometric shapes beneath the Amazon canopy. A monk's midnight scribbles in the Devil's Bible whisper secrets we're only now learning to decode. History isn't set in stone, it's a puzzle with missing pieces, and every discovery shifts the picture. That's where you come in. Question everything, dig deeper. Share the stories that don't make the textbooks, because history isn't just about the past, it's about who gets to control the future. And if today's deep dive taught us anything, it's that the most shocking secrets are still out there, waiting to be found. If you love unraveling these mysteries with us, hit that like button, subscribe for more mind-bending deep dives, and drop your favorite historical enigma in the comments. We might just explore it next. Until then, keep questioning, keep searching, and remember, the greatest stories aren't the ones we know, they're the ones we've yet to